Welcome to the Friendship Sermon Podcast. Friendship exists to bring people to Jesus and to develop them into fully mature, reproducing followers. Gather to worship with us Sundays at 9 or 10:45, or visit us online at fcbc.church.
So if you know anything about me, you know that I really never preach anything to you that I have not been preaching to myself. And so this past week especially, I've been wrestling with a lot of things as it relates to missions. I always try to set aside some time in November to do an emphasis on world missions, largely because I feel like in some ways I have strayed a little bit, and I feel like our church has even strayed a little bit. And it's odd that, I guess part of spiritual growth is I kind of always thought the closer I got to Jesus, the more spiritual I would be, and the more I knew about God's word and the more I applied it, the better of a Christian I would be. But I've learned over the years that if you're not careful, especially when you begin to focus on one area of your life, you'll realize other areas of your life begin to stray a little bit. And when I first came to this church, the church was very much emphasized world missions. We had missionaries all over the world. Huge amounts of our budget were going to that. But I felt like we weren't as well focused about bringing our own neighbors to Christ. It was all about, we got missionaries all over the world, yay, missions. So I really began to emphasize our mission statement that was to bring people to Jesus and to develop them into fully mature, reproducing followers. And we really focused on bringing people to Jesus here. And over the years, as that was kind of every sermon, you guys know you hear that a lot, right? You know, who are your friends? Who are your neighbors? Who are you inviting to church? How are you trying to bring people to know Jesus? I've kind of lost sight on what's going on around the world. And that's why I think it's important that we take a couple of weeks to consider the state of the world. Now, this video is actually about 10 years old. It claims that there are 60 million displaced people and 15 million refugees. I looked it up this week, and that number has now doubled. There are 120 million displaced people. That's like 1/3 of the population of the United States that have been, whether it's war, famine, disease, whatever, have been forced out of their homes, forced around. And of course, the biggest challenge for that is as people are moving, you don't have the opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus. You know, unless God is moving you from a place that doesn't have the gospel to a place that does have the gospel. And it really just began to challenge my thought process. Do I think missionally? That's really my thought, is like, as I study Scripture, do I think missionally? And you're very much aware, I know that immigration is a loaded hand grenade to throw out here 2 days before an election. But I could just argue for you that neither party thinks missionally about this. The one party, build a wall, keep them out, don't, us four and no more, don't come in and take over my country. The other party, let them in, bring them in, let them, give them everything, the whole 9 yards. Neither one is actually saying, how can we reach them with the gospel of Jesus Christ? And as I began to study this passage that we're going to look at this morning, Psalm 67, I just realized, God has a whole different perspective. God wants to see the gospel of Jesus go to every single nation and to reach everyone with the good news. And it was like a sucker punch. As I wrestled through this passage, it began to challenge so many of my thoughts and beliefs. Again, a lot of stuff that I used to really hold to, I still hold to it. It's just amazing how, you begin to focus on other areas of your life. You know what I'm talking about? And you're like, maybe I need to go back and tighten up this area of my life. So I just want to share some things with you that to me were really profound and exciting. And I hope to be encouraging to you today, but I also hope to really make you think. Because what we're going to see in Psalm 67 is that God's blessing brings joy to the nations. I want you to see this morning that God's blessing brings joy to the nations. This is a song. It is written to the choir master with stringed instruments, a psalm. It is a song. I absolutely love how talented Pastor Steve is here. We were in our Thursday morning staff meeting where we just kind of run through Sunday real quick, review all the songs, and I was like, what's this song? He said, I saw you were preaching Psalm 67, so I wrote a song about it. And I was like, oh my word, what? And he does that quite frequently. If you ever don't know a song, it's probably because he just took the passage and set it to music. So hopefully those lines go through your head this week, and it just really helps you really internalize this message. But let's just go through it line at a time. Notice what it says in verse 1. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us. How many of you want that to happen in your life? It's not a trick question. Yeah, absolutely. God's blessing to us, all right? Now, what I want you to see is that this is a chiasm. You knew that, right? It was coming, right? It begins with God's blessing to us, and it ends with God's blessing to us. Look down at the very last line. God shall bless us in verse 7. It begins with, we want God's blessing. It ends with God's blessing. It talks about God's ways being known on the earth. It talks about the earth yielding its increase. It talks about all people praising God in verse 3, and then it repeats that in verse 5. And then I typed it should be verse 4, I think. Let nations be glad and sing for joy. God's judgment and guidance comes in there in verse 4. That's kind of the middle part of the chiasm. What is this point about blessing? Why do we want God to be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine upon us? First off, this references the Aaronic blessing back in Numbers. Okay, I think we're actually going to close with this today. And it says this, in fact, Moses commanded Aaron, he said, this is what you should always say to the people. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Just quick aside, you didn't pay for this. Words are powerful. Blessings are powerful. Prayers are powerful. Can I beg of you to memorize this and to speak it over your family? Every time my kids get out to go to work, every time they get out to go to school, whenever I'm running them around, I'm a full-time Uber driver now. And when they jump out, I would say, the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, the door slams. And I say, and may he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And I don't even think they know it till this morning. One of my kids was praying and he rattled it off like word perfect. I was like, oh, you do listen. Because here's the deal. And I've said this before. How many of you, somebody in your life said you were stupid, said you would never make it? Somebody said something and that word had power, didn't it? Because you fought that your whole life, trying to break the stranglehold of that. Would you know that the Lord is gracious to you? He blesses you. He keeps you. He makes his face shine on you. I want that in my life. And this is why this psalm begins by saying, God, I want you, his face to shine. You know the difference between watching grandparents watch kids play soccer and parents watch kids play soccer? The parents are a mess, right? Because we do have a responsibility to raise our kids. One of my kids tackled kids out on the field. You just randomly run up and tackle them. And I'm like, I should have put him in football instead of soccer. Another one of my kids was a daisy picker. And you're like, would you please go kick the ball and not just pick the flowers, right? As a parent, what do grandparents do? They just drink in the kids, don't they? They're just, oh, it's a daisy picker. I love that. Yeah, you used to be that way. Oh, just tackling another kid. Yeah, you used to do that too. God's like a grandparent. Just his face is shining. God is looking down right now and he's like, Jesus, angels, check out friendship. Do you realize that? You didn't even think about that. God is literally like, his face is just like lit up and shining on us right now because of that. And so the psalmist says, may God be gracious to us, bless us, make his face shine upon us. And notice verse 2, so that we can retire early, take our kids to Disney World, and drive a bigger truck. Right? I mean, that's why I want to raise next year. Don't you? That your way may be known on earth. Your saving power among all nations. This idea that God blesses us so that his way can be known on earth actually kind of goes back to the Abrahamic blessing. There's the Aaronic blessing that I just taught you about. Now let's talk about the Abrahamic blessing. In Genesis chapter 12, God tells Abraham, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great so that you can retire early and buy a beach house. No, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. That's pretty cool. And him who dishonors you, I will curse. That's pretty scary. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Wow, through Abraham, everybody in the world would be blessed. And if you want to know how that happened, look about 5 feet to the right. Because Abraham, speaking of grandchildren, who was Abraham's great-great-great-great-grandchild? It was Jesus. Now, a couple of things we need to talk about. First and foremost, the direct application of this passage is that God blessed Abraham, made his name great in order to bless everyone, and he has blessed everyone by sending Jesus Christ to save us. Some people go with what is called replacement theology, and that means is that they take every verse of the Bible and they apply it to us today. So we just take this to mean that God will make of us a great nation. That's talking about America. And I will bless you and make your name great. That's talking about us. And I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and we will bless everyone. you can't do that because this is a promise specifically made to Abraham. You can't just immediately pull it out and apply it to us. However, we don't just lock this in on Abraham. Does this promise reflect the character of God? Does our God like to bless people? And when he blesses those people, what does he expect them to do with that blessing? To bless others. So would it be much of a stretch to assume that at least the general aspects of this may still be true in our lives today? I think that's fair. Again, Job taught the retributive principle. We can't guarantee this because Job did everything right. And did God bless him? Well, at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle there was a really difficult time. So we cannot claim this like as a promise, but we can claim it, I think, as a principle of God's character, that this can most likely play out in elements in our lives. Are you following me? Working through that? Okay. But notice again, the reason God is blessing us is not for ourselves, but he is blessing us to be a blessing to others, and so that his name may be known on the earth and his saving power among all nations. And this is where it really began to kind of have a sucker punch for me as I think about our election. And I think about what I want for this country. And honestly, what I want for this country is for my life to be good. I want my kids to go to good schools where they don't have crazy ideology slammed down their throat. I want the economy to be good. I want my retirement account to continue to increase. I want to have enough money to buy a nicer car. I want to be able to take my kids on a nice vacation. I want inflation to go down so that I can buy more stuff because I know that will make me happier. And that's exactly what I need to happen. So I'm going to vote for the candidate that is going to bring about the best blessing for me. Now, I know you guys are just like me. Don't give me these judgmental looks like, Robert, I can't believe that's why you're voting. You're voting for the nations, right? But what are we supposed to be thinking about? These blessings are not for us. These blessings are for the world. If any good happens in our country, if plane flights stay cheap, that's not so we can fly to Tahiti. That's so we can fly to Peru on mission trips. Guilt, like I'm going to work this one, okay? How many of you are going to take a flight this year on a vacation, but wouldn't dare think about setting on a missions trip? If God is good to you and he blesses you, and I'm not saying that it's wrong to take a vacation, but have you ever gone on a missions trip? The goal of God's blessing is that his way may be known on earth and his saving power among all nations. He blesses us so that the world can know his salvation. You see, his blessings reveal his way and saving power. That's what we want to reveal to the world. Now I want you to look at verse 3. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. Can I ask you, what would it look like for the world to praise God? Look at verse 4. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy. Have you ever seen nations singing? When was the last time you saw people singing outside of church? For that matter, when was the last time you saw people singing in church? I love Friendship because we sing here. How many of you have been to a church where nobody sings? Man, the band was up there and the music was pumping and everybody just stood there. Those are dead churches. Leave them. Okay? Seriously, singing happens when we rejoice. Isn't it sad the only time you see people singing now is when they're drunk in a bar doing karaoke, right? What has happened to our great country? We're angry all the time. We used to get together and sing. If I told you guys, hey, we're going to have a sing-along at my house this week, none of you would show up because you're more interested in watching Netflix. You'd rather watch The Voice and watch somebody sing on The Voice than actually gather together to sing. There is something about singing that is powerful. And the psalmist here, right in the heartbeat of the chiasm, says, I want the peoples to praise you, O God, not just me and my people, but all the peoples. In verse 3, when it talks about the peoples, it's talking about different people groups. This is hard for us because we think of ourselves as Americans, but actually our country is fragmenting and we are beginning to have different people groups. How many of you are friends with somebody on Facebook of a very different political persuasion? Okay? How many of you really question what they post and wonder what country they're living in? You know what I'm talking about? They speak English, they live in the same country, and you're like, oh my word, I do not understand what you're saying. Do those people need Jesus? They do. But it's going to be a lot more challenging because they're not going to receive Jesus the way you do, because in your mind, the world very clearly looks this way. In their mind, the world very clearly looks this way. And the psalmist says, I want all of those people to come to know Jesus. And there's something about singing, I think, that draws us together. I always love to go down to the West Lawn of the National Capitol. Or at the Capitol there on the West Lawn, they do free concerts. We usually skip 4th of July because it's so crowded, but Memorial Day, I take my family down there and they do an awesome Memorial Day concert, and they bring in veterans from all the different wars, and it's really awesome to show my kids, like, our freedom is not free, and we are here enjoying this because of the sacrifice of other people. The Labor Day concert is that's just a simple, basic plug for the NSO, and they just kind of preview their fall music and really have a lot of fun. But they got a new conductor in, and I think it might have been just a month or two ago when we went, or maybe it was last year, I forget. You know, you get old and all the years run together, right? But I'll never forget standing on the West Lawn of the Capitol, and they asked us all to stand and sing America the Beautiful. And so I stood, and of course you're down there and you're looking around, and I'll tell you what, none of those people there were from my people or my tribe. You're all sorts of weird people in D.C. coming out to a concert, right? And so we're all standing, but we're all singing, "Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties that rise above the plain." And then we got to the chorus, and it says, "God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea." And of course, I knew the God we were singing about, and I got the impression that probably 99% of the people around me had no idea about the God we were singing, but I thought, God, here we are, as messed up as this country is, standing on the lawn of the United States Capitol and singing a prayer. And I just begged God, I was like, for all the things that are going wrong, I pray that you hear this prayer. And I pray that our nation would sing, and I pray that other nations would sing, and I pray that people would come collectively to sing for joy, not just because we were told to sing along with the NSO. Why are they to sing for joy in verse 4 here? Because you judge the peoples with equity. What would it look like for the nations to sing? Have you thought about that? To think about that, okay? To notice God's blessings of righteous judgments. Abby, can you click forward for me twice? It got locked up for a second. You can go ahead and bring in righteous judgments and, well, back it up. There we go. Perfect. It brings in God's righteous judgments. You know, one of the things that concerns me now is we don't have any faith in our judicial system. If you're a staunch Republican, you are convinced that it is being weaponized to go against people that the Democrats don't like. If you're a staunch Democrat, you are convinced that the Supreme Court got stacked to overturn Roe v. Wade. Neither side is respecting judgments. You can't have a country when you don't even believe in the judicial system. And the psalmist here is recognizing that one of the key bedrocks of joy is being able to trust in the judicial system. And of course, who's the only true judge? God. And do we recognize God as the one and true judge? That's what the world needs. The world doesn't need more money. The world doesn't need a better economy. The world needs to know God's righteous judgment. Which, by the way, what is the greatest story of God's righteous judgment? That every one of us deserve wrath and deserve punishment in hell apart from God forever. But God chose to take his wrath and pour it out on his son, Jesus, instead of on us. That's the righteous judgment of God that needs to be proclaimed. That's why people need to sing. Because if they understand that and that God judges the people with equity and he guides the nations on earth, then verse 5, the people will praise you. Now we're working our way out of the chiasm. The people will praise you, O God. All the peoples will praise you. Notice verse 6. The earth has yielded its increase. Again, I just began to think about this past week and realizing that the earth's yield is a sign of God's blessing. When I was younger, I thought that every good thing in my life came from me. My education, my wise choices, my hard work, and I thought that I had done everything. And I feel like with each passing year, I realize I do nothing, and I just got really lucky. And God has looked out for me. And my parents shepherded my education. Others have stepped up. You guys are like the best church in the world to pastor. So every good thing in my life is because others have poured it out on me. And then I began to think of our country. Why is our country as great as it is? It's not because we've made it that way. We just happen to be sitting on the best piece of real estate in the world, in my opinion. It is a beautiful land, America the Beautiful, for the amber waves of grain, the purple mountains, all of those things. If you've been out west, have you seen how pretty this country is? Do you know the natural resources that exist here? Do you know how much the earth here has yielded its increase? Do you realize that we are great not because of anything we have done, but because God simply caused the earth to yield? The sun out there that is powering our solar panels and growing our crops, the rain that makes them, that fills the Mississippi River, that waters like the whole middle part of the country. Do you understand what we have? Maybe not. I get real quiet. The earth has yielded its increase. God has poured forth all of this. And I just think every time we go out and we look at creation, we should be blown away at what God has done for us. And when we see the earth yielding its increase, that allows us to be confident that God is blessing us. And God, our God, shall bless us. And when God blesses us, let all the ends of the earth fear him. You see, fearing God is the natural response to his blessing. And our goal and our dream is for all the ends of the earth to fear God. And this is why I circle back to the video that I started with. And I know immigration's like a bomb thing, and I'm really not trying to blow us up, but I am trying to make us think. Every one of us came here as immigrants. My family came to Jamestown, by the way, so I've been here longer than all y'all. Get out of my country. Now, if you really want to have fun, look up George Kendall in Wikipedia. I've told you before, it was bad in Jamestown. He tried to steal the boat and sail back to England, and they shot him, and he was the first capital punishment in North America, was my super great-grandfather. So, fortunately, he already had 3 sons, and that's where we came from, okay? But no, we came, what does the Statue of Liberty say? Give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. People are desperately looking for the gospel. They don't realize it's the gospel. What they think they want is just a safe place and a good place to go. We have the good news that they need. We have what will make people sing for joy. Now, please understand, you do have to have rules. You can't just let people completely run over your country. I understand that, and I know there's not simple answers. And I know you don't just give everybody free health care and give everybody, free everything. But I also know that when people are fleeing and they are seeking something, historically, biblically, we were all that way. And we're to be welcomed in. And I think that this is where we want to begin to think scripturally about things. We want to recognize that the good and the blessings that we have are a result of God's grace. I told my kids, I made them watch the presidential debate, and I about turned the TV off. I got so angry because both candidates took absolute credit for every good thing that happened in their administration and absolutely slammed the other one for every bad thing that ever happened on the planet of the earth. And I told my kids, I was like, really? Yeah, gas was cheaper under Trump. Do you really want another pandemic? I mean, that's how we got $2 gas. Don't kid yourself. And we also lost a ton of jobs. And yeah, all the jobs came back under Biden. Well, if you want to have another, you know what I'm saying? You can't do that. God is the one that gives blessings. And we as Christians should rise above that, and we should see these things, that it is God's blessings that give it. And that's why when God blesses us, the ends of the earth fear him. Not a political leader. We want people to fear God. So I ask you this morning, what blessings has God given that can advance the gospel? You understand, when we have strong diplomatic ties with other countries, we can put missionaries in so many other countries. You understand, when the economy is good and the giving is good, we can use that extra finances not to bless ourselves, but to bless the world. I ask you this, how are you seeking gladness not for yourself, but for the nations? Are you desiring to see joy for others everywhere? Because that's what God did for us. That's what this psalm calls us to do, is to have a view of the nations. How many of you are familiar with the 1040 window? See, again, this is where I feel like I've failed as a pastor. The 1040 window, as you'll see here in just a minute, is the place where the vast majority of people cannot even hear about Jesus if they wanted to. We didn't even realize how many of us drove past so many different churches to come in here this morning, and we can go to church anywhere, and whether, we judge churches on the the color of the carpet and how cold the room is or how hot the room is or how good the coffee was. There's a lot of people in the world that can't even hear the good news of Jesus. And I want to finish with this brief video that will help you see the need to get the gospel to the ends of the world.